Welcome to another episode of Navigating Growth, where we showcase companies that are doing new and unique things. My name is Sal Imami from Better Call Sal, and co-hosting with me is Kevin Hooper from Hanging with Mr. Hooper. Today, I'm excited to talk about something we all love as humans, sugar. Humans are predisposed to seeking out sugar as it signals a high caloric food. This was great when we were cavemen. However, nowadays, our bodies are overwhelmed with sugar as it is so abundant, and it is detrimental to us, as excess sugar can cause obesity, diabetes, heart disease, among other things. So what do we do? Well, there's artificial sweeteners on the market. However, research has shown that they can cause cancer and other diseases. Recently, natural sweeteners have been introduced, and it's promising to replace sugar, such as stevia and erythritol, which are derived from plants. However, they don't taste or act like sugar. The reason I'm so excited to introduce our guest is he's bringing a natural sweetener to the market that is zero carb, zero glycemic index, and best of all, it acts and tastes just like sugar. Our guest today is Pete Ferrari, the founder of Jaca. Pete, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sal. It's good to be with you.
So let's start off by telling us, what is Jaca?
Jaca is it's a paradigm shifting ingredient. And to your point, you're exactly correct. Jaca is actually a sugar. It's a monosaccharide. So it's got the same molecular composition as the sugar that we all grew up with, but the molecules affix themselves to each other in different groupings. And that really changes it from a poison into a superfood. And so it gives us a unique opportunity to leverage something that, as you say, cooks like sugar, tastes like sugar, bakes like sugar, and really has none of the health detriments that traditional cane or beet sugar affords. So this is a very unique opportunity for us in this marketplace. According to the International Food Information Council, IFIC, the biggest study organization of their kind, they did a study last year and found that less than 15% of Americans have ever heard of this sugar. It's technically called psychose. I've been doing this for a couple of years now, outreach with investors all over the country and all over the world. And I would suggest to you that that number is probably less than 5%. So we've got a very unique opportunity to help hundreds of millions of people across this country and the globe embrace this healthy sugar and keep their quality of life as high as possible, catering to that sweet tooth.
That is a really, really interesting, game-changing idea. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be exposed to this? And then how did you then look at this idea the way we have and say, I'm going to build a company around this product? How did that all start?
If we take a step back 2 years ago plus, I was actually a residential real estate developer. So I would put in subdivisions. I would put in the roads and the utilities, and I would put in the entrance and the pool and the clubhouse, and I would sell those lots to builders. I was doing this in Nashville, Tennessee, which is a top 10 market in the country, where I had been going for more than a decade, before it was even a top 100 market. Advanced network. I had premier properties being brought to me. I'm in my 50s. My daughter's going off to college. I'm about to embark upon my twilight years, just great quality of life, right where I wanted to be. I was asked to be on the board of directors of another health food company. So this was a company that had created a plant-based flour, and they were building recipes with this flour, and it had all the badges that you would want: non-GMO, vegan friendly, halal certified, Proposition 65 compliant, zero glycemic index. And so it intrigued me. I've been living a lifestyle of good health and well-being for 40 years now. I'm 56 years old. And so it intrigued me. Of course, I entertained the opportunity to be on the board. But before I could advocate it, I said, you got to send me a care package. I've got to taste what you are promoting in the marketplace so that I can stand behind it. So they sent me a care package. And naturally, it had cakes and muffins and waffle mixes and pancake mixes, and it had breads in it, because literally flour and sugars and everything. And these products, Kevin, they tasted so good that I knew they had sugar in them. Because if you've ever had a product that has stevia in it, or Truvia, Wheat and Low, or aspartame equal, it tastes like you're chewing on a wad of tinfoil or a bag of nickels. I mean, it's just horrible. You can't cook with that stuff. So I knew these products had sugar in them because they tasted fantastic. So I called my colleague back and I said, hey, I get what you're saying elementally from your recipe formulation standpoint, because your flour is vegan friendly, non-GMO, halal certified. That's all those great things. However, you've got sugar in these products. Sugar kills more people every year than guns do. You cannot make these health claims. It doesn't, it's a huge clashing there. And he said, well, Pete, it's not sucrose, which is the sugar we grew up with. It's not sucrose, it's psychose. And I said, well, okay, well, here we go. You know, the classic skepticism. I remember I was 10 years old, and my grandmother in McDonald's would take the pink Sweet and Low packets home to use in her coffee. We've been hearing for literally 40 years that everything tastes like sugar. So I said, here we go. So he goes into the merits of this sugar. It's a monosaccharide. It is got all the bad badges and the formulaic accoutrements that you would want nowadays in a food product. It also has been clinically proven through randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials, the best of their kind. Has been proven to reduce subcutaneous body fat. It's been proven to control appetite, unlike cane sugar, which has been clinically proven to be 5 times more addictive than cocaine. It's been proven to inhibit the body's ability to assimilate new fat. So this gentleman's going through all the merits of this sugar, and naturally, as you probably are, I had sirens and bells and whistles going off all over the place. I didn't believe a word he was saying. So I said, okay, send me the data, send me the data. And I deep dove literally for a month. I read all of the human-based clinical trials that were referred to, and I read the clinical trials from the footnotes within the clinical trials that were referred to. And a month later, I came out the other end, and I said, you can have your flour. This is the company. You know, sugar is a worldwide epidemic. 30 million people in this country have diabetes. 150 million are pre-diabetic. 400 million people across the world have diabetes. This is where you can really build your legacy and help hundreds of millions of people. So I jumped out of real estate development with both feet, and I jumped into the sugar business head first. And that's kind of how I found myself here. It really was just a compelling moment for me where I think I could be proud of something that we leave behind here, building a generational company where we're helping people literally change the trajectory of their lives and embark upon a path of good health and well-being. So as you can probably tell, I'm super excited about this. I just get so evangelical about it. I'm so excited. It's hard to contain.
That's a phenomenal story, and a lot like other founders that we've spoken to in this series. You are clearly the best person to be communicating the value proposition of your company. That's awesome. Now, all right, so let's talk about maybe 2 or 3 seconds after you've had the idea up to yesterday. Walk us through what that journey of the last couple of years has been like.
It's super interesting, Kevin and Sal, because you think about it, right? So I'm a real estate developer. I built tech companies in Atlanta in the 90s. So I'm a tech guy. That's where I was weaned through to a liquidity event. Now I'm going to be in the consumer product goods business. I don't know anything about supply chains on that level. I don't know anything about promoting food products, but I know I have to be here. Once I evaluated the merits of the sugar itself, was it vetted? Was it everything that they said it was? And is there really no presence or intellectual property surrounding the sugar in this country, which gives me opportunity? Once I vetted all that, I said, okay, how am I going to promote it now? One thing I know I can't do is I cannot build a scalable, sustainable business subject to the whims of other companies. I can't go to Nestle and Cargill and Unilever as a nobody and say, please see me, please have an audience with me. We've got this great sugar, which, by the way, they've already heard of. It was first identified in the 1970s. They've heard of it. They just don't want any part of it because it will really hurt and cannibalize their current product suites. So I knew I couldn't go to companies like that and ask for an audience. I wouldn't get one, and I couldn't raise money under those auspices. No one would invest in a company where I'm subject to the winds of big companies and I have no traction. Additionally, I knew I couldn't build a sustainable business and a scalable business by going to the big grocery retailers like Publix and Kroger and Wegmans and begging for 1 inch by 1 inch of shelf space down here in the bottom left corner somewhere. That's not going to serve my investor community or my company as I'm trying to scale and teach people about this sugar. This is an early adopter environment. There's really no market for this particular paradigm shifting sugar versus the industry. So in order to get people compelled to purchase the sugar, you first have to teach them about it. And so every company I've ever built, tech companies, have always been early adopter. And that's really the sweet spot. You've got to teach people what you're promoting to them before you can ask them to purchase it. It's a different skill set. Knowing that, immediately it clicked. Well, the internet's the model. Gary Vaynerchuk, I love his videos. I've been watching him for years. And one of my favorite quotes from Gary is, he's talking about why the internet is, quote, tearing up our society. And he's like, it's very simple. what used to cost $50 million to compete head to head against Coca-Cola, because you had to buy your way into Albertsons, you had to buy your way into Safeway, you had to create a manufacturing facility, you had to formulate a recipe, you had to procure the products, you had to find distribution. What used to cost $50 million can now be done for $200,000. Get a product, outsource co-packing and 3PL, do some internet marketing, and you are, quote, in the game. So the direct-to-consumer model vision was born for this company. It gives me a one-to-one dialogue with my demographic, my consumer base, where I can teach them about the merits of this sugar, help them live a healthier, higher quality of life, and hopefully compel them to embrace the sugar and really make it a part of their family or use it over time. So once I decided the direct-to-consumer model was definitely the way to go, and of course, you look at the business cases. Look at what Lip Kit and Kylie Jenner did to 100-year-old multi-billion-dollar companies like Revlon and Avon and Estee Lauder. She crushed them. Never did a print ad, never had an inch of shelf space, never did a TV ad. Look at what Gymshark is doing to Nike. Look at what Movement Watches is doing to Rolex. Look at what Fashion Nova is doing to Prada. The direct-to-consumer model is incredibly economical and incredibly accelerated way to build a brand. So once I determined that that was the move, we went right to VaynerMedia. I went to Gary Vaynerchuk's company himself. We deployed our whole first round of capital with VaynerMedia to create the name Jaca, create the brand book, iconography, manifesto, story, e-commerce infrastructure. We developed world-class assets because in this model, on the internet, you've really got to get people's attention. Deloitte did a study. They actually studied the $1 trillion buying base for millennials and Gen Zers. Literally, they control $1 trillion in buying power because what they're doing is it's called parenting the parent. They're telling their parents what companies to buy from and what companies not to buy from. Deloitte found that 75% of the decision to buy a product has nothing to do with the product itself. It's about corporate social responsibility, environmental sustainability, packaging, sexy marketing assets. These are 3/4 of the reasons why people are buying a product nowadays. And so in this model, I had to go to the best of the best to develop those things. We also, to your point about walking you through the initial vision, I knew immediately we needed to become a benefit corporation, a B Corp, which really builds ESG and CSR into the corporate charter. Our executives are bound by protocols that they have to adhere to in the CSR and ESG world. It took 6 months for us to get certified as a pending B Corp, like Ben & Jerry's, like some Procter & Gamble companies, like Patagonia. But it was well worth it because this company cares about people, not just their diet and nutrition. It cares about people across the board. So from my standpoint, that was another fundamental pillar that needed to be in place as we build this company. And so those are really two of the initial steps. Direct-to-consumer model, Gary Vaynerchuk, benefit corporation, put together the supply chain, negotiate the supplier agreements with multiple manufacturers, vet manufacturers, co-packer, 3PL, and position ourselves to launch in this domain.
So let's switch gears and talk about partnerships. Partnerships are a great way to accelerate growth in any business. As you know, partnerships come in all shapes and all sizes. So what types of partnerships have you engaged with, and what has worked with those partners and what hasn't?
We've been opportunistic, and we've also been fortunate in a few different regards. Colleagues of colleagues have introduced me to certain strategic partners where I've got the ability to co-brand and co-create products with certain companies out there. I can share some of it with you. It might be a little bit ambiguous because I'm under non-disclosure and the contracts aren't signed yet, but I'm deep enough in the process and negotiation where I'm comfortable. We've actually been through bench trials. Bench trials, it's what's called when you're formulating a recipe with a product in order to figure out if it works, if it can be folded into your existing product line. We're actually working with a very large-scale beverage corporation, privately held, and they formulated a drink with Jaca, and they brought in 9 people to do a blind taste test. They put the new Jaca formulated drink against one of the current drinks that's on the market today and is doing very well for them from a revenue stream standpoint. 9 out of 9 people in the blind taste test chose the Jaca beverage. So they're so excited. They're preparing to introduce 5 new products that are Jaca based, 2 alcoholic and 3 non-alcoholic. That's going to be an incredible partnership. A big part of that is a co-branded label. So you will see the Jaca logo on the label, And that's going to be a way that we scale a brand. It's very, very important. You talk about what would go wrong with partnerships. I've been approached many, many times to function as a wholesaler, because I've got an incredible deal that I've negotiated with the supplier to pass through the product, let them incorporate it into their recipe, and I'd have a modest revenue stream as a wholesaler. That's not of interest to me. I've got to build a brand here. I've got a paradigm shifting ingredient across a generational company. So if we're not going to co-create and we're not going to co-brand, I'm afraid you're not my audience. And I've turned down many people in this regard. But I have had a lot of people that are receptive to it. We're working with a very, very large scale gummy bear manufacturer, right? The gummy bear is basically all sugar. This company has been able not only to replace the sugar in their gummy bear, they've replaced the corn syrup in their gummy bear, which gives it the gelatinous-like substance. Incredibly effective recipe formulation. Co-branded gummy bears in our future. I've got another couple, I won't bore you with the details, but I've got another couple of large-scale agreements with multi-billion-dollar global companies that we're working with, where we've been through successful bench trials. They're willing to co-brand. They want to continue to co-create. Those are the kind of strategic partnerships that Jaca and Global Foods Group will engage in.
So let's go back to those first couple of 3 seconds. After you have this idea, after you've experienced the light bulb going off, if you knew then what you know now, 2 years into building this, what would you do differently or better?
Knowing what I know now, I would probably have accelerated the business development deals, the corporate partnerships with the companies that I've been introduced to. I would have tried to accelerate that a little bit quicker. Not only does it give you more lift in the way of brand awareness, because these are established companies where you're riding the coattails of their traction over decades in some instances, which naturally makes good business sense, but it also dramatically increases the valuation of the company in a quicker fashion. So literally, when one of these contracts gets inked, based upon the size of these deals, the valuation of this company could conceivably quadruple. If I could be a quadruple the valuation 6 months ago, that's hugely relevant in the gestation period of a startup. One day can mean the difference between life and death in a startup. So if I could have accelerated that sooner, 6 months ago, be a quadruple the valuation, there would be exponential difference in where I would be right now, having that versus where I currently am. I would like to have done that much, much quicker for sure.
Just to sort of summarize what we've heard here with you today, there's a notion that's coming out of all of our interviews with our founders of startups. One of them is you get exposed to an idea that then sparks a different path that began with that idea. It wasn't about the products that this particular rare sugar was in. It was your vision for what the rare sugar was going to do as you bring it to market. The second part that is really interesting that we're uncovering here is this notion of the effect of the business model, solving this human challenge that people have around our food sources. You have that passion, but recognizing that in the third decade of the 21st century, we have access to new and unique and proven business models for bringing products in a unique way to a market that will be receptive to handling that. And then this last thing is this idea of now, once you've built that concept, you've built that brand, leveraging that brand with other partnerships, continue to deliver on that vision that you had from that very first meeting. Pete Ferrari, thank you very much with Jaca Sugar. Best of luck. Sal Emami, my good friend from Better Call Sal, thanks very much for your time. And for everybody in the audience, come back for another episode of Navigating Growth. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.